Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about Mistborn Secret History by Brandon Sanderson. And as usual, we're going to talk general thoughts and non-spoilery opinions up front, and then we're going to move over to the spoiler section where I talk pros and cons and give a general summary on my thoughts on the story as a whole. And with that being said, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and let's begin. So, Mistborn Secret History. Mistborn Secret History, I can't even start to talk about without giving a huge spoiler warning for the entire trilogy of Mistborn, the first trilogy, because everything that happens in it is a spoiler. So, major spoiler warning for the first Mistborn trilogy. Mistborn Secret History is about Kelsier, the man who died at the beginning of Final Empire, and everything that happened to him after he died. So really the story, the plot and everything, well, the plot is kind of exactly the same as book 2 and book 3 because it's all the same events, we're just seeing it from a different perspective. Even though Kelsier was kind of stuck in a singular location for a good chunk of that time, but we kind of time skip over that anyway. So pretty much everything is like all the mystery stuff that was happening in Mistborn, all the mist spirit and all that kind of stuff that we didn't know what it was. There's just different little mysteries and stuff. It all ties back to what Kelsier was doing. So it's really, really cool. It's a lot of fun and it's a really cool story that's like a nice add-on to the Cosmere, but like it's almost a must read because it explains so much about the Cosmere. And as a huge world building and magic system person, like it's amazing. I love it so much. It's probably my favorite Mistborn thing that exists right now because it just explains so much about the magic systems and the world building of the Cosmere and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna have to leave non-spoiler stuff there and get into more details in the spoiler section because there is actually some really cool reveals that happen in here and some like groups and things like that that are worth the surprise. So if you haven't read it, I definitely recommend it, or the audiobook. So let's move over to spoiler section. So spoiler warning for Mistborn Secret History. In the spoiler section over here in the spoilery section, we get to talk about the different people that Kelsier got to meet. Like Kelsier ran into one of the coolest things that I liked about it, at least I'll say, is that Kelsier ran into this group of people we don't really know who they are, but they had the orb of power that was going to connect them to preservation because they wanted to take up the shard of preservation. Based on all the clues that we have, I kind of think they might be Elantrians, but it's very unclear. So it's really interesting that, like, in the cognitive realm, because we know that's basically like the in-between place or whatever where you can skip to jump to other planets in a shorter time period than you would if, like, you're on a spaceship or something like that. So it's really cool to see other groups and like just more people that are aware of that space. It's not such a huge mystery and stuff. So I'm so curious about like all the stuff that goes on there, like interplanetary trade through Shadesmar, through the different cognitive realms and stuff, like in planets that in in planets that like have issues. Like, so the idea that those people that Kelsier ran into are Elantrians like really intrigues me because there is like issues in the cognitive realm for planet Cell. Like the two shards that were over that planet were destroyed, and it caused all kinds of issues and stuff. So the cognitive is supposed to be like not safe at all. So I don't know how they will get into the cognitive realm on that planet without basically being destroyed. So there's got to be some good stuff in there. And then they're getting over to Scadrial, and like we learn more basically about how cognitive shadows are made because that's basically what Kelsier is. Well, I don't know. It's not very much visualized, but to me, it became clear that when preservation told Kelsier to be preserved and like imprinted him as a cognitive shadow, that basically forced his soul to go back to the spiritual realm, and it just like went into the collective there. So now he's just a copy of his soul as investiture. So it's really interesting. And before Kelsier even meets that group, he runs into this other smaller group of people that are basically just trying to watch a shard die. Like they just want to kind of see it happen or whatever. But one of them is Chris from Taldane from the White Sand books. So, or the White Sand graphic novel rather. And like that's really cool. She's also the person that writes the Ars Arcanum in the back of like all the other books. So, like she's a huge Stormlight scholar and stuff. So like that's the closest thing we got to like the actual Silverlight people and stuff like that, and like actually get to know what they know about the Cosmere, because that's like my favorite part of all of it. Like I'm so desperate to know the inner workings of it, how it all works, how it all plays together. Like even I'm really curious to even know like what was it like before Ad Nauseam was shattered. And, oh, and by the way, this review is not going to have any cons because it's my favorite like Cosmere pick apart little novella Brandon has done. So I'm just basically going to gush about it the entire time. So let's continue. Something else I really, really liked about it, apart from the cool different groups that Kelsier meets, we get to learn more about like the way shards work, the way they kind of can piece themselves off. Like Preservation and Ruin had a deal. They made a deal basically in order to make humans because they had to combine their power in order to make something like that. So the whole deal was that basically they can make, you know, Earth like planet, like all this kind of stuff, and then Ruin could basically be more or less the devil and the end of the world and destroy it all and all this kind of stuff. But Preservation betrayed him by doing, like, by basically kind of Mark Zuckerberg in the contract or whatever. But the way he does this is like by sacrificing his mind, like his cognitive aspect of himself as a shard. So that amount of power was used basically as a catalyst to basically trap Ruin to be a little bit stronger than him. I guess it would be contextually, he would be a little stronger. So I think it's really cool how he was basically dead but not dead. I could be mistaken on which part of Preservation it was, but in any case, I think it's really, really amazing how he can like pull off a part of him and use that as basically a fulcrum of power. But like the power itself is so, you know, incredible and sentient that Kelsier was hanging out with a version of him that was technically dead, but he was still alive and very sapient and stuff. He just didn't have his mind, so he couldn't quite remember the plan and stuff that he put in motion. So it was really, really cool, and it shows this really cool kind of dichotomy between like the power and the vessel. Apart from that, Brandon really gets into the whole like intent of the shard kind of overruling the person's personality, and it kind of to a degree it overrules what you would think of as conventional morality. Like their god Preservation, he liked the Lord Ruler, who was the bad guy and did like all kinds of bad stuff or whatever, but he liked him because he was immortal in that way, and he was like preserved and kept everything about the world basically the same for 1,000 years. So he was a very good example of preservation, even though he wasn't, you know, a good monarch or anything like that. So I think it's really cool that even though contextually Preservation is the good god or whatever, but you know it doesn't really matter because any of them in extreme would be terrible. So it's basically showing the ramifications of when you take God and shatter it into its different aspects, and none of those aspects are living with context. So it's just it creates all kinds of interesting and fun chaos, and I love that we're getting into this kind of stuff. I really hope Brandon does another novella kind of like this. Like he said, potential Secret History Part 2. So I'm hoping we get a lot of that and potentially something similar with, you know, within like Stormlight or within one of the other worlds. Like maybe I mean like a Secret History for Warbreaker or something, and like bind those crossover points and stuff like that. That would be a lot of fun. I would really dig that. So I guess I'll finish up by talking about my last big thing that I really like about it, and that is Kelsier himself. I like the way Brandon developed Kelsier and the Final Empire, the way, you know, we saw he wasn't, you know, that great, but he wasn't terrible and stuff, and like his issues he had with Marsh because he was more like Marsh like really wanted the, you know, to work with the rebellion and help the sky and do all of this stuff, and like that was his mission in life, and Kelsier was just kind of flopping around and like doing all this other stuff and just kind of fell into it and somehow did it better and all that stuff. So there was this interesting resentment But I kind of feel like it was deserved because Kelsier very much was just like a leaf in the wind, floating around, playing around, being, doing the thief crew and doing all this stuff, and only really started to do the rebellion stuff when it was convenient for him. So it was very much, his line about goals align and stuff like that. So I like the fact that Brandon takes that and then just kind of goes with it. So it almost recontextualizes his sacrifice because at the end of the Final Empire, like when he sacrifices himself, you kind of take it as actually, when I got to that point, I took it as him basically saying, all right, skip it, I don't have anything else. Because when he tried the 11th metal and it didn't work, and it didn't work in the way he thought it would, and it wasn't helping him do anything, he knew that there was no getting away. So the only way to solidify everything he had set up and done and still win, even though he would die, was to die. So I saw it as, like, technically, yes, it was a noble sacrifice and it helped people, but I still saw it as Kelsier winning. It was like it was almost a flip the game board kind of thing. It was something like that. And then I feel like Brandon just expanded on that concept with this whole thing of, like, as soon as he died and he met God, and God is like, okay, you're about to go to the spiritual realm, and like, this is how it works. You're only here a little bit longer because you were Alamancer and stuff. And he like, no, and all this stuff, and he freaks out, and like, he goes to run and end up getting trapped into the Well of Ascension basically for $2 or something for like almost all the way up to the end of the third book, to the Hero of Ages. And it's completely deserved. It's so funny because he messes himself up and he trips over his own feet because he's so brash and he's just like forever going, but he's always like, he thinks he's doing something so altruistic, and he thinks he's like, being the good guy, but that's really just what he's telling himself in order to not feel bad about how selfish he really is and how much he's really about himself. Because even at the very end, when he sees Vin, like after Vin and Ellen have died and they're in the spiritual realm and Sazed's there because, he's God now and stuff, like he's basically like has the opportunity to leave with his adoptive daughter and go find his wife that died and stuff like that and all this kind of stuff, and he basically says no because, like, no matter what, like Kelsier, he still sees that as a loss. Just, a peaceful end and all that kind of stuff and going off, he kind of sees it as a loss. So he's like, no, he's going to go play with hemalurgy and like take advantage of all the stuff he learned when he was preservation for that short period of time, and like basically try to come back to life and keep doing what he does. And he does, so it's a lot of fun, and I like it a lot, and I can't wait to see what he does next and where Brandon goes with this character next. He's like one of my favorite anti-heroes right now because he was like a hero only in context, but he's really a villain in other ways. So he's like this fun anti-hero. So I dug it a lot. It's one of my favorite novellas that Brandon's ever put out, and I can't recommend it enough. So what was your favorite parts about Mistborn Secret History? Let me know in the comments down below. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will talk to you all next time. Peace.